Hello everyone, I am Shubha Kankaria and welcome to episode 16 of Dastai Rahi. It is a travel talk where we get to know about amazing places through wonderful stories of various travelers. So our today's guest is an architect and a development professional. His work takes him to some really remote and sometimes restricted areas in the country. Today, he's going to talk about his experiences in Rajasthan and Kashmir. So, guys, without any further delay, let's get on board Anurup Satle. Hi Anurup, how are you?
Hi Shubha, I'm doing good.
Welcome to Dastai Rahi. I'm excited to have you.
Same here, excited to be on the podcast.
So, to begin with our talk, I know you have got a very interesting job profile and it has taken you to a lot of remote places of India. But before talking about your experiences at these places, I would like you to give us a glimpse of what kind of projects you work on.
I work as an development professional, and my work has majorly been involved working with government officials and companies doing CSRs and bilateral and multilateral organizations like UN or World Bank or Gates Foundation. So but it has taken me for various projects like sanitation in Jammu Kashmir to urban sanitation in Pune and community development through industrialization, which was one district, one product in Gorakhpur. So it's been all around the place, and yeah, one was also in Kanyakumari, which was more of an education upliftment of the rural people. So uh, so it's been all over the. So I've been all over the place at various places doing various work, working with people from different cultures and backgrounds. So it's been quite exciting up till now. So it's about any scheme which has to be implemented on ground, and it just come like a new concept in India. So wherein I come in helping the administration uh, plan the scheme, then create an implementation mechanism for it, and then overall creating monitoring and evaluation model for the same so that it becomes a sustainable kind of an impact.
Okay. So working on grass level, like basic root level.
Yes, so it's been interesting. So all the uh, strategy work and creating a model and all happens with the top tier of the government officials, where we work with principal secretaries and state secretaries and district collectors. And when so the insight comes from the ground. So we have to be really connected with the ground as well. Only then we can create an action plan for the implementation. So we work on both the parallels. So we bring insight from the ground and then create a strategy with the higher ups.
Wow. Yeah. So, moving on, talking about travel. I know, like you said, you have worked on projects and you have been to some quite offbeat places in terms of implementing strategies and working on the program. And starting with, like you said, you worked in Jaisalmer. So I would like to start with Rajasthan. How was your experience in Rajasthan and what offbeat places it took you to?
So my work in Rajasthan was one of the best opportunities I had, because one was the work, because work was very interesting. I had to work on rural sanitation. I was deployed by the Ministry of Drinking Water and Sanitation, and which was associated with Tata Trust. So so we were working on Swachh Bharat Mission Gramin, where we would come up with implementation plans for the scheme, and we would try and come up with creative ways to spread out the message of hygiene and sanitation And here is where the tricky part is, because you're working with a rural population, so you can't just go print a booklet and spread among them and they'll know about these things. So what we try to do in this process, we would invite the local artisans and musicians as well. So what we would do is we would have them in our Swachhata rallies and so Achhata sabhas, where they would come up with songs and poems in the local language, which would teach people about importance and benefits about cleanliness and things and a toilet. So it was altogether a different experience. We also invited international artists who stayed in a village for 10 days and kind of beautified the whole village, and that inspired the people to further do this in other villages as well. So this was a very exciting part about my work in Jaisalmer, and the other part was where I lived in. So I actually stayed in 800-year old fort. It's the Golden Fort in Jaisalmer. So I lived on the fort for 1.5 years until I was in Jaisalmer, and one of the most beautiful experiences I've had. I've met new people from all parts of the world, and experiencing the that typical royalness on the fort was something I'd never actually thought in my life. So I had an amazing experience in Jaisalmer. The other thing, offbeat places, I would say there's on the India-Pakistan border. I had an opportunity to go over there, and it's a Gram Panchayat called Sahagar. So Sahagar, you can call it in terms of land area. It is one of the biggest Gram Panchayat, not only in India, maybe I think in Asia as well. So it's the last Gram Panchayat on the India-Pakistan border, and it's a deserted, like it's a desert land of around, you can say, around 200 odd square kilometers, and you just have 69 people living in that big mass of land.
Wow.
And yeah, and it's like you can't even access the place by a car. So after a point, you have to leave your cars behind, and you have to go on a jeep or on a camel to go and actually meet people at the dhanis who live over there.
But how close
So
is the place from the Pakistan border? I mean, how close is the
so
border?
from Pakistan border, so I can tell you from the no man's land where the India check post is, it's just hardly like 5 or 10 kilometers. So you can actually see the Indian check post, and then you see the no man's land, and then you see the Pakistani check post.
So that must be restricted area, right? I mean, or any individual can go.
Yeah, it's a highly restricted place. Only the government officials and the army officials can go to that place. So as I was working with the district administration and was being sent by the ministry themselves, so I had this privilege, and I made the most use of this opportunity to travel to that place. And it is also a cheetah sanctuary in India. It's the only cheetah sanctuary in India, where
You like cheetah existed in India? Did they?
they are actually trying to rehabilitate them back into this land where they were, and they've now got extinct. So they are trying to rehabilitate that place.
Okay. Wow.
The other interesting part about this place and called Sahagar is these people who live over there. These are basically Sindh Pathans. which have been, yeah, you have these Sindh Pathani people who live over there who have been there since generation, and they have a sustainable way of living. So being cut off from the mainland since so many decades and centuries, uh, they've learned how to sustain themselves with their own available resources. So it's like they make houses out of the thick grass which grows in the desert. They dry it out, and then they use goat hair to make ropes which they use to tie the grass, and then they use that grass a bunch to make a house.
Wow.
And these you can call them uh, these huts are basically like they are in a cluster of five or six, and it's called a dhani. And they're, yeah, and the speciality about this dhanis are they keep moving with the season. So uh, in the in the in the summers, and in the summers they are on the top of the dune because they want the cold winds of the desert. And in the monsoons they come up again, and in the winters they go down the dune because they want to safeguard themselves from the cold harsh winds in the desert.
Yeah.
So it's like every 4 months they keep moving up and down the dunes.
Wow. I mean, like the nomads, basically.
Yeah, they are basically the nomads. They only survive on their livestock, which is camels, cows, and goats.
Wow. This
And
I feel you're quite lucky to visit a place like this. And none of us would be able to probably visit a place like this.
yeah, it's one of the most uh, like you can't even imagine a land like this where you just see uh, four people or 10 people in a cluster in a desert, and there's absolutely nothing else over there.
Yeah.
And one more good part about this place is if anyone is into astro photography, it's one of the best places in India to do that, because you absolutely don't have any city light.
Okay.
So with your eyes, you can with your naked eyes, you can actually see the Milky Way around the Earth if it is a no moon day.
Wow. That sounds beautiful. I mean, did you try the photography?
I actually didn't have a chance to click pictures over there at that time, because by that time I had drained out my camera battery.
Okay.
But it was one of I felt it was one of the best places to do that. And amazing landscape. You have these drooling sand dunes which keep on moving throughout the day with the winds. So while going and while coming, it's like you won't see the same landscape.
Wow. So this place is how far from Jaisalmer?
This place is around 190 kilometers from Jaisalmer city,
Okay.
and the BSF checkpost is at around 100 kilometers from the main city. So most of the people they can just go up to that border checkpost, and beyond that you need a special permission to go into that zone then.
Wow. I mean, this place really sounds amazing to me, and I'm sure you had a great time visiting this place.
Yes, it was really nice. The few special things which I could enjoy over there was the goat milk and the camel milk, and then the local food they make on the chulas and all. and it's basically they use very a minimum of water into everything. So they won't instead of serving you water or tea, they would prefer serving you milk.
Okay. So, like in place of
So
using water, they would like to use something which is like
right,
kind of saving water,
right. Jaisalmer, yeah, like I would say local artisans over there. So I've met a couple of local artisans who have been national awardees over there, and they have been practicing their art since generation. So uh, one of such artists was Mr. Tagaram ji. He comes from the Bhil. He comes from the Bhil community, and he lives to a village very near to the main city. So I and his son happened to be my colleague's friend. So we ultimately got along well together, and his father is into playing these double flute.
double flute. Okay.
Yeah, and both of them they have a different pitch and a sound, and they can play they play at the same time they play different tunes on both of them.
Wow, that's
So
that's a talent.
yeah, that's actually a talent, and I was actually surprised to see how can someone be actually doing this thing because it's so difficult. At the same time, how can you play two different tunes? Uh,
Right.
so and plus, what he has actually also gone on to doing is he has created a music school of his own in his house campus where international artists or local artists can come and stay over there and learn this art from him. And he has also made a few of these local kind of garden toys, what we call it. Like he has a wooden raw seesaw, so it's like just a bark of a tree trying to rest on a pointed bark of a tree, which serves your purpose of a seesaw. And the interesting part is in between, like where the joint is, they put some kind of a oil and a piece of a coal. And even when you play this seesaw, it has a tune of its own.
Like this voice the seesaw makes, kind of that.
Yeah. So it's basically like I call it as a musical seesaw. So every time you go up and down, it has some kind of a tune of its own, and which is absolutely beautiful to experience. And I've actually not seen such places, so even I was kind of astonished to see such creativity happening in rural parts of India.
Yeah. So I was about Jaisalmer. I was reading somewhere about this very famous place called Dr. Bhang. I mean, there's some person and a place existed like that. So would you like to talk about that?
Okay, Dr. Bhan. As I lived on the fort, so just down the fort, you have this shop which has a big board outside, and it says legal bhang shop. And when I first it was my first time traveling to the fort. It was quite shocking for me because I'd never imagined something like this in India, especially.
Mhm.
So there's this guy, and he calls himself as Dr. Bhang. He's been there since like 25 or 30 odd years. He's been documented by Nat Geo and Discovery and all of these travel shows.
Yeah.
And the best part about his shop is basically he has a 4-page menu card of things with Bhang.
Okay.
So, and he calls himself as a doctor because he'll first have a conversation with you. So he has like his kind of a room where you can go and have a seat, and he'll come and talk to you, as in um, kind of know more about you. And as per your habits, he will kind of prescribe you what a degree of bhang you should have. So it can be light, medium, strong, or full power, or 24-hour, no sleep, no shower.
Oh my God.
So
This is all is part of the menu.
yeah. So this is all part of his menu, and that is how he explains his thing. Like everyone in Jaisalmer, especially the locals, they have this way of having their own slangs, or kind of their own one-liners to attract people.
Yeah.
So he would have bhang in lassi. You can have bhang cookies. You can have bhang chocolate, or you can even have a rolled cigarette of a bhang.
Okay.
So that was quite a shocker for me to find such a place. And uh, but he's an amazing person to meet in himself. Like the way he carries his personality, he comes in a sometimes you will see him in a dhule ka suit and a safa, and he's at the bhang shop. So you cannot even imagine a person like that at a bhang shop.
Right.
And he's quite entertaining. A person has a personality, a charming personality of his own,
Mhm.
and a truly amazing guy, I would say.
Yeah, I think I had seen some videos about him, and I was quite curious to know, like, what kind of things goes there. So definitely, your experience is quite entertaining. Yeah. Okay, so we talked about Jaisalmer, and I'm sure you had a couple of other experiences in Rajasthan. But moving on, where did your project next take to you?
So after Jaisalmer, I was for some time I was in Jaipur, and then I had an opportunity to work in Jammu Kashmir.
Okay.
So I was asked like, which state do you want to go to? So I asked them if I can go to Jammu Kashmir and work. So initially I was told that I can work in Jammu, and then they will see if I can work in Kashmir once I started to understand the place better. So with the same project and the same organizations I was working with, I moved on to working in a small city called Ramban.
Ramban.
Yeah, and it's basically a city which links Jammu and Kashmir division. So it's at the yeah, it's actually at the conjuncture of these two divisions. And once you cross Ramban, to cross Ramban into Kashmir, you have this Jawar tunnel. So once you cross that tunnel, everything would change. The weather would change, the way people dress, they change, the food habits change, the language changes, and it's like it's totally a new world you've come into.
Okay.
And post that, I was moved on to the state office in Jammu Kashmir. So the best part about working in state office is like every 6 months they have this thing called Darbar move.
Darbar.
So yeah, so Darbar move is it's been this slang has been there since the old time, because previously when Jammu Kashmir was a princely state, they had this Darbar, like the king's Darbar would move, like in the winters the Darbar would move to Jammu, and in the summers the Darbar would move to Kashmir.
Okay.
So the same thing still used to continue until the abolition of Article 370, and when Jammu and Kashmir were made two different union territories. So up till then, even the state secretariat, which now looks after the administration of the state, actually moves every 6 months. So with the Darbar moved, I had an opportunity to work in Jammu as well, and then move with the Darbar and go to Kashmir and work over there as well.
So, like, when you say you move, what does that mean? I mean, like, people start working from a different office, just that's the move, or how it is?
So it's basically all the files, everything in the secretariat gets packed into trunks. The trunks get loaded into army trucks, and then with the army convoy, it travels for 10 days from Jammu to Kashmir. And with this, even the people who work in the secretariat, they also shift.
Okay.
So if there are Kashmiri people who are working in the secretariat and the Darbar is moving to Jammu, the state administration actually gives them accommodation in Jammu for free.
Oh, like it's like a proper move and pack sort of thing.
Yeah, it's a big shift. It's just like, just imagine the whole state administration moves. It takes like 15 days. You have a off for a Darbar shift or a Darbar move where everything moves. So you come to this place again and then you go to that place again, and it's quite an experience. Like I think nowhere in India you have this kind of an administrative setup which actually moves.
Yeah.
And now it's no more in practice, because now they both have like Jammu and Kashmir are now union territories. So now they have stopped doing this practice, but it was quite an experience, and we would enjoy those 15 days of leave, you can say.
A very different sort of leave.
Right, exactly. And there it was nice. Like I could see both the cultures. Jammu is more like Delhi and Chandigarh. It has a Punjabi feel to it. And Kashmir is totally a different world. I would say there's no other place in India or maybe in the world where you can have this. You can feel the Kashmirian,
Okay.
and you have these beautiful people living in Kashmir, and they're very soft spoken. They are very kind hearted, and they have amazing, beautiful places in Kashmir. Like you have these saffron fields in Pampore. You have so many unexplored hilly regions like Gurez Valley. You have these. You have Wular Lake in Bandipura. You have the apple orchids in Shopian. It has the second largest apple mandi in Asia is in Shopian.
Okay. I didn't know that.
And yeah, and you have you have this small cluster of artisans in Anantnag where they make these Kashmir willow or cricket bats. So most of the famous Indian cricketers would usually order their bats from that place in Kashmir. And it's totally a different land. Like you'll have a few special things about Kashmir is like the tea. So you have you have this thing called kahwa.
Yeah.
So kahwa is basically a saffron tea which has few other spices as well, and it has bits and pieces of dry fruit. So it is usually served during the winters because it keeps you warm.
Okay.
And during the summers and in the afternoon, they have this thing called noon chai, which is a salty tea which keeps you hydrated at
Oh,
that time.
I think I've heard this noon chai is kind of like sort of like a butter tea sort of, I think.
Yeah, it's quite creamy, and sometimes it has a different color to it. It has, because they sometimes add a pinch of saffron to it, so it becomes a pink chai.
Acha, okay.
It looks like pink, so it's like it's quite a contrast. It looks pink, but it will taste a bit salty.
Okay, okay. So, but
And
people say that Kashmir is a heaven on earth. It's always said for Kashmir. How do you feel? Like, does this statement justify Kashmir?
Uh, I would say, yeah, that's like the most apt description of Kashmir. Like how people say कि अगर कहीं जन्नत है तो वो कश्मीर में है,
Yeah.
and it's actually true to its every word, because you have this beautiful setting of Dal Lake with boat houses, and you have a boat, a fleet market in the morning happening over there, and you have this beautiful backdrop of snow-clad mountains, and most of the Kashmiri houses are these typical wooden houses with sloping roof and a beautiful gardens outside it, and even the food in Kashmir, it's totally different from what you experience in other parts of India. So the Kashmiri cuisine, if you want to experience the best Kashmiri cuisine, is to be invited by a local Kashmiri, or you, if you get a chance to attend a Kashmiri wedding. So they have this Wazwan meal, which is cooked by Waza, and it's predominantly a non-vegetarian feast. And it goes into, it can be from 12 course to 25 and more courses of meat served over a period of time.
Okay.
And yeah, and it comes in different forms, like you will have meatballs, to you'll have kebabs cooked over a grill, to you have the famous Kashmiri Rogan Josh, and the sag thing which they have over there. So it's, and the best part about a Kashmiri wedding is, even if you're not able to eat, you can, they can actually, they gives you containers and bags, so you can pack things and you can take it back home, so nothing gets wasted.
Wow, that's nice. I mean, the wedding has this always problem that a lot of food is wasted, but a concept like
Right.
this is, I'm sure, a very nice one.
Right, and in this way, I would say what I could experience, having been traveled to so many different places and having met so many different people, what I could sense was these were like interesting parts about Kashmir, and few interesting things and incidents which happened while I was working in Kashmir would be like, we would always travel, if you're working in Kashmir, it's usually during the daytime,
Okay.
and like around 4 o'clock your day ends, and the best part about that is, after that you can just go to the Dal Lake and you can have a boat ride over there, and your work would the rural areas of Kashmir are like on the hills. So you have one house is on, like you have a couple of houses on this part of the hill. Then you have to trek down, or you have to trek up to go to the other hamlet.
Yeah.
And everyone is like is into their whole family is occupied with things. So they have these every Kashmiri houses would have these apricot trees next to their house. So they get their apricot from there itself. Women of the house would be involved into spreading it out and drying it out into the open sun. And you have kind of apple tree near the house, or the woman of the house is involved into some kind of an embroidery work or something.
Yeah.
And their houses are usually made out of wood. So even the floor, the staircase, and the roof, the whole house is constructed out of wood. And they have this interesting thing which is called Khatam Band.
Okay.
So, Khatam Band is basically a panel partition between two rooms. So, if they are having a function or an event in their house, so they would open the panels and it would become one big room,
All sort of.
like a hall. And if they want, once it is done, they would put the panel back against. And the most interesting part about this partition is like it is so skillfully crafted that you won't even know where it begins and where it ends. So you won't even actually know that it is a partition. Hence, it is called खत्म बंद, कि आपको कहाँ पे वो खत्म होता है और कहाँ पे बंद होता है आपको पता नहीं चलेगा.
Right. That's interesting.
And yeah, and usually you'll find Kashmiri houses. You go, you'll have Kaleen spread out in the living room, and everyone sits on the floor. And if it is winter time, you'll you'll be like you will be first given warm blankets to comfort yourself, and then you would be overfed by the love of Kashmiri people, because it starts from Keva, and then they go on to feed you for like at least 1 or 2 hours after that. So, like, until the whole Wazwan meal ends,
Yeah.
it's I think it's either 1 or 2 hours of feeding time which they spend. And I think I've been, most of the times I've been overfed.
I think this says so much about the hospitality of the Kashmiri people.
Yes, I would say Kashmir has never been truly experienced by many people in India. And even the true Kashmiriat, what you see once you have a chance to live with the locals, has been never been portrayed or been seen by most of the people, and it's truly an amazing experience.
Exploring Kashmir is a to-do list or in so many travelers list, and the experience and the information you have shared definitely makes like someone people would be tempted to go to Kashmir for sure.
Yeah, truly. And one of the best times to go to saffron harvesting. So you have to go around 24th of October to 28th of October. So
Okay. These
that's
are like
one.
specific days when the
Yeah. So yeah, right. So you just have these 4 or 5 days in uh, in 1 year where the saffron flower would bloom. And it's basically a small tehsil in Pulwama district, which is on the way to Srinagar by road.
okay.
So it's a town called Pampur, and you have acres of saffron fields over there, and it's the only place in India where you can grow saffron, and it's been cultivated since centuries over there. So during this peak season, you have even the army would have its outpost, and they would be guarding the saffron fields because it's known as one of the most expensive spices in the world,
Right.
and the whole family is involved into this. So even the kids, the females in the family, the men, they all go to pick saffron flowers, and every part of the saffron flower is being used. So the petals, they go to companies which are into making cosmetics and perfumes, and the strand of saffron. So the white and the yellow part is being taken by the sweet shop guys and who make mithai,
Yeah.
and the real red strand is what actually sells, and it usually gets exported around the globe from India, from that small town in India, and it's a one of a kind experience to see thousands of these purple flowers with only two strands of saffron in each of the flowers.
Yeah.
So quite an experience to walk among those fields.
Yeah. I mean, Satish,
And
the western window also makes it difficult. I mean, like you said, the whole family actually gets together to make it happen.
yeah, it's actually quite a task, and I think that is because it's been a very laborious work, and this thing cannot be replicated with a machine or something because it's involved with a very delicate thing like a flower and the stand.
Right.
So uh, I think that is what makes it so special and so expensive as well.
Right. Right. Yes, I think.
And yeah, and also they have this. They have all the other things also. You'll find you'll have golden shahad. You'll have white shahad. You'll have other dry fruits. You'll have kagzi akhroat. So kagzi akhroat is basically the outer shell of the apricot is as thin as paper. So you can basically break it with a thumb, and that's the best quality of apricot you'll like akhroat you'll find in the country, and it's called kagzi akhroat. And similarly, you'll find this safed shahad, which is basically like it's basically transparent, and it's like a thick transparent gel kind of a thing. And it's basically when the honeybees, they only go to the sunflower flowers
Okay.
to harvest the nectar, and that is when you get this safed shahad, and which is very good for people with diabetes.
Okay.
And that was one of the thing which I only saw it in Kashmir. And like every part of Kashmir, you go, you meet people, like you find these artisans working into a boat emporium. So you have these boat houses into the Dal Lake,
Hmm.
and उसके पीछे भी एक बहुत अच्छी कहानी. I think most of the people might be knowing that the king of Jammu Kashmir said no to the Britishers that they cannot buy land and build a house in Jammu Kashmir. So Britishers came up with a nice idea to build a houseboat.
Yeah.
So that is how this culture of houseboat came into being in Kashmir. And since then, you have these boat emporiums where you have this art shop uh, on a boat in the Dal Lake. You can go and buy things over there.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much to that place, but I'm not sure how much people actually know. Because, of course, people go with the typical itineraries and they're not able to explore all the aspects of Kashmir.
Right, actually, because this I could experience because I lived with the locals, and most of my colleagues were from the Kashmir.
So, moving on, I mean, we are almost at the end of our talk. And from your experiences, I can see you have been to some really crazy places and have had some really, really interesting conversations and experiences around India. But, if there's any dream place that you want to go and work, what place would that be?
Okay, my dream place, I would say, being into development sector, I think I've been always drawn towards working in Africa or in African countries because you have uh, there's so much of a scope of trying something new, trying to use your creativity and innovation to solve problems over there. And because it's quite similar to what nomadic people, you have these tribes in Africa which are less known. They have very different culture and beliefs. And I think whatever I've been experiencing up till now kind of resonates with what I want to do, and that would be, I think, one of my dream places to go and work over there, and especially the wildlife in Africa as well, because I've been always intrigued by the savannas and things over there. So it would be quite an experience to go and work with uh, the remote tribes and locals in Africa.
Yeah, sounds like a really interesting dream place. Especially in the perspective of what you want to do, being in that place specifically. So, Anurup, this brings us to the end of the talk, and I think it was lovely speaking to you and the crazy experiences, hearing them out. So, thank you so much for coming on Dastai Rahi. It was such a pleasure to have you for the talk.
Thank you so much for having me board and giving me an opportunity to talk about all my experiences. Was great talking to you.
Yeah, same here. Thank you so much, and we'll see another week, another traveler. Till then, take care. Thank you.